Sagittarius, God is preparing a painful cut, but it's to protect you. Sagittarius, there's something in your life right now that you've built your identity around. A relationship, a dream, a role, a version of yourself that feels too precious to imagine living without. You've poured your fire into it. You've shaped your days, your choices, your emotions around its existence. And yet, something deep inside you knows that its season is ending. You've felt it lately, haven't you? That subtle tightening in your chest. The sense that something you love has started to feel heavier, harder to hold. The signs have been whispering quietly, but your heart keeps shouting louder. Not yet, not this. Because you're afraid that if this leaves, part of you will leave with it. But here's the truth. God is preparing to cut away something that has grown too intertwined with your sense of worth. It will hurt, not because it's punishment, but because divine protection often comes disguised as loss. The blade doesn't strike to destroy, it strikes to free. You see, Sagittarius, sometimes the very thing that once gave your life meaning becomes the thing that keeps you from your next expansion. The archer can't shoot if she keeps clutching the same target long after it's served its purpose. You're being guided toward authenticity, toward a version of yourself that no longer depends on what's fading. Stay with me. Breathe. Because what feels like loss now is actually preparation for liberation. Gate 1. When what you love becomes what limits you. Sagittarius, you've always been a creature of devotion. When you believe in something, you give yourself to it completely, heart, time, and soul. Whether it's a person, a mission, a calling, or an ideal, you don't love halfway. You pour everything you have into it, trusting that your faith and passion can keep it alive. And most of the time, that faith serves you well. It's what turns your dreams into movement, your ideas into worlds. But there are moments like the one you're in now, when that same loyalty becomes the chain that binds you. You've been holding tightly to something that once felt like home. Perhaps it was a relationship that made you believe in love again, a career that gave your life purpose, or a dream you've nurtured for so long it feels like part of your identity. Whatever it is, it has shaped you deeply, and now the thought of losing it feels like erasing a part of your soul. But the divine sees what you cannot yet, that this attachment, once sacred, has quietly begun to drain you. What once expanded you is now confining you. What once aligned you is now suffocating you. You've felt the signs even if you've tried to ignore them. The subtle dissonance in conversations that once felt effortless. The heaviness that follows moments that used to ignite your joy. The exhaustion that no amount of rest can cure. You keep telling yourself it's just a phase, that if you hold on tighter, everything will return to what it once was. But deep down, you know something has shifted. The energy doesn't flow the same anymore. The river that once carried you forward now feels like it's pulling you under. This is the painful irony of growth. Sometimes evolution demands separation. The people, habits, and roles that once fit perfectly must now be released, not because they were mistakes but because they were bridges. They carried you from one version of yourself to another, and now you've reached the other side. To cling to them is to refuse your own expansion. Sagittarius, God is preparing a divine surgery. It will hurt, yes, but not because it's cruel. It will hurt because you've fused your sense of worth with something temporary. You've told yourself, if I lose this, I lose myself. But that's the illusion the divine is about to shatter. You were never created to build your identity around another human, title, or image. You were born whole. Your worth isn't rooted in what you hold. It radiates from what you are. There's something sacred about this coming cut. It's not random, nor is it punishment for misplaced trust. It's precision. God is pruning away everything that's dimmed your light under the disguise of purpose. You've been walking around with the weight of something that no longer vibrates at your frequency. And though your mind keeps whispering, but I can't lose this, it means too much, your soul is quietly answering, if I don't let go, I'll lose myself. When this divine intervention arrives, it may look like endings. Friendships fading, projects collapsing, doors closing. But those aren't losses, they're recalibrations. The universe is clearing your field, so that only what's aligned with your highest self can remain. You may cry, resist, even rage, and that's okay. Pain is part of the purification. You're being emptied not to be punished, but to be filled again with something true. Sagittarius, I know how much it hurts to release what you once prayed for. I know how much it breaks you to admit that something beautiful has become unhealthy. But remember this. Nothing real ever dies. Only illusions fall away. What's being cut is not your blessing. It's the barrier between you and your blessing. So when the blade comes, meet it with courage. Let yourself feel everything, the grief, the anger, the confusion. And then beneath all that, feel the whisper of relief. Because deep down you already know this truth. What's leaving isn't your light. It's what's been blocking it. Gate 2, the illusion of control and the fear of loss. Sagittarius, your spirit is brave, wild, and endlessly curious. You thrive on freedom, on movement, on exploring new horizons. But when you love something or someone, you hold on with the same intensity you once reserved for discovery. You tell yourself it's loyalty, commitment, faith. And yes, it is. But sometimes that fierce devotion becomes a quiet form of fear, the fear of losing what defines you. You're not afraid of endings themselves. You're afraid of the void that follows. The silence after the goodbye. The stillness that echoes when the thing you've built your life around suddenly disappears. You've built your identity around being the one who perseveres, who keeps believing even when others give up. So when the universe asks you to let go, it feels like failure. You tell yourself, if I can just hold on a little longer, I can fix it. I can make it work. But some things, Sagittarius, were never meant to be repaired, they were meant to be released. There's a particular cruelty in divine timing that feels humanly unfair. You can feel something slipping away but not understand why. You fight, you pray, you negotiate. You promise to do better, to try harder. But no matter how tightly you grip, it keeps moving further out of reach. It's not because you're unworthy. It's because the energy has completed its purpose. And the longer you resist, the sharper the pain becomes when God finally makes the cut for you. Your mind keeps insisting that losing this thing, or this person, will unravel you. But your soul knows better. Your soul has been whispering for months. It's time. You've silenced it with logic, drowned it with distraction, convinced yourself that surrender means giving up. Yet surrender is not defeat. It's trust in divine protection. When you surrender, you're not abandoning your power. You're aligning it with something infinitely wiser. Sagittarius, you've been here before. You've lost before and survived. But this time feels different, doesn't it? Because this time what's being taken isn't external. It's tied to your identity. The version of you that existed within this attachment is dissolving. And your pride, the part of you that thrives on strength and perseverance, doesn't know how to grieve that. You've mistaken attachment for purpose, consistency for loyalty, and endurance for love. But true love, true alignment, never asks you to shrink. So what's really happening is this. The divine is removing what you won't. Gently, precisely, without your permission but always with your protection in mind. The reason it feels like the ground is shaking is because the foundation you've built your identity on is being replaced. You've been standing on borrowed ground, depending on people or roles or outcomes that were never meant to hold your soul's weight forever. The truth that hurts most to accept is that this, whatever this is, served its purpose already. It taught you something invaluable about yourself. It helped you discover your capacity for loyalty, for devotion, for love. But now that lesson is complete. To cling is to repeat, to release is to evolve. I know that the thought of letting go terrifies you. I know you worry that once this ends, your world will shrink. But in time you'll see that the opposite happens. The moment you surrender what was never truly yours to keep, your world expands. You make space for what's real, connections that don't require performance, opportunities that don't cost your peace, and love that doesn't drain your spirit. This is the paradox of divine intervention. It breaks you open to reveal your wholeness. It cuts what's false to protect what's sacred. And though you can't see it yet, every tear you shed now is watering the soil of your next season. Sagittarius, God is not taking something from you to leave you empty. He's creating space for what's next. And when that next arrives, it will feel like recognition. A long-awaited exhale after years of holding your breath. Until then, trust the process. You don't have to understand it to benefit from it. Just cooperate with it. Gate 3. When the blade becomes the blessing. Sagittarius, there will come a moment soon, if it hasn't already, when the cut you feared finally arrives. A separation, a revelation, a truth that can no longer be ignored. It won't be quiet. It will echo through every corner of your being. You'll feel it in your chest, in your breath, in that hollow silence that follows realization. The mind will panic, trying to bargain, asking, why now? Why this? Why me? but the divine will answer softly yet firmly. Because you're ready. Ready, not because you don't feel the pain but because you've finally grown strong enough to face it. Ready, not because the loss is easy, but because your soul has outgrown what once kept you small. When the divine removes something from your path, it rarely feels like protection in the moment. It feels like betrayal, abandonment, disaster. You look at the ruins of what used to give you meaning and wonder how you'll rebuild. But Sagittarius, if you look closer, you'll notice that what's collapsing isn't your life. It's your illusion of control. You were never meant to hold it all together. You were meant to let life hold you. This is the moment where many souls retreat, where they numb the pain instead of walking through it. But not you. You, Sagittarius, were built for transformation. The same fire that fuels your optimism also purifies your pain. You're not meant to suppress this moment. You're meant to alchemize it. Every heartbreak, every disappointment, every forced ending is raw material for your rebirth. And though you may not see it now, this cut is surgical. It removes precisely what is decaying, what has been quietly draining your energy behind the mask of comfort. God doesn't cut to harm, He cuts to heal. Like a skilled surgeon, He sees the infection that you've learned to tolerate, the relationship that slowly erodes your confidence, the role that consumes your joy, the attachment that limits your wings. You've mistaken pain for love, sacrifice for strength. You've normalized struggle because it once meant purpose. But there comes a moment when even struggle becomes toxic, when endurance turns into bondage. And that's when the blade descends, not to destroy you but to free you. I know you're tempted to look at what's being taken and say, it wasn't all bad. And you're right, it wasn't. It had beauty, purpose, and meaning. But even a beautiful cage is still a cage. You decorated it with optimism, convinced yourself it was home, but your spirit always knew it was temporary. The divine never intended for you to shrink to fit anyone's comfort. You are not meant to revolve around what limits your light. Sagittarius, the reason this cut hurts so deeply is because it touches your pride. You built part of your identity around what's being removed. To lose it feels like losing yourself. But the truth is the opposite. By losing it, you'll find yourself again. You'll remember who you were before you became who others needed you to be. You'll rediscover the joy of existing without obligation, the thrill of simply being alive. And in that rediscovery, you'll feel something sacred, lightness. The heaviness that's followed you for months will start to dissolve. Your laughter will return. Not the polite laugh you used to hide pain, but the real one that comes from your belly, from your freedom. You'll wake up one morning and realize you're breathing easier. That's how divine protection feels when the healing begins. It feels like air returning to your lungs. This is the hidden mercy of loss. It removes the noise so you can finally hear yourself again. It quiets the chaos so you can feel your own rhythm. It empties your hands so you can receive what's truly meant for you. The moment you stop asking, why is this happening to me? And start whispering, what is this trying to teach me? You step from victimhood into wisdom. Sagittarius, you are being purified by fire. It will hurt, yes, but fire also illuminates. It shows you the truth. Who loved you for your essence and who loved you for your energy. Who stayed because they cared and who stayed because you kept giving. Who genuinely saw your worth and who simply consumed it. Let the fire reveal what's real. In this cut lies your protection. What's leaving was never meant to last because it couldn't hold your growth. You outgrew it the moment you started feeling restless, the moment you started questioning if this was all there was. That inner unrest wasn't discontent. It was prophecy. Your spirit was already preparing for flight long before the door opened. So when the cut comes, and it will, don't curse the blade. Bless it. It's your freedom disguised as loss. Gate for the release that redefines you. Sagittarius, when the blade falls, there will be a stillness that feels almost unbearable. The silence after endings always does. You'll look around and realize how much of your identity was wrapped around what has been taken. How many of your thoughts, plans, and dreams revolved around that one person, role, or attachment? You'll feel stripped, exposed, uncertain of who you are without it. But that emptiness isn't a void. It's space. The sacred space where God begins rebuilding you from truth, rather than illusion. In those early days, grief will come in waves. You'll miss the comfort of what was familiar, even if it wasn't fulfilling. You'll question if you made a mistake. You'll find yourself reaching for memories that once felt like safety blankets. But listen, those are echoes of a self that no longer exists. You can visit them, but you cannot live there anymore. You are not being asked to erase your past. You're being asked to evolve beyond it. What's happening now is divine redefinition. The version of you that needed external validation, that confused love with loyalty, that equated sacrifice with strength, that version is dissolving. You are being returned to your original form. Wild, radiant, uncontainable. The archer who roams freely, guided not by fear of loss but by faith and purpose. And yes, Sagittarius, your pride will ache. Because you will realize how long you've tolerated less than you deserved, how many times you gave second chances to situations that kept wounding you, how many times you begged for crumbs from tables you were meant to outgrow. That realization will sting. But it's also your awakening. You will no longer confuse endurance with devotion. You will no longer romanticize struggle. You will finally see that the love which demands your diminishment is not love. It's dependency. Every time God removes something, He replaces it with something that reflects your worth. But He can't place golden hands clinging to dust. That's why this cut feels so severe. It's separating you from what you once called home, so that you can finally live as the sovereign of your own life. You are not losing security. You are gaining sovereignty. You are not being abandoned. You are being realigned. This period will test your faith. People will question your choices. Some will call you distant, selfish, or changed. They won't understand that choosing peace over pain is not selfish. It's sacred. They were comfortable with the version of you who kept giving endlessly. They won't recognize this new you. The one who protects her energy, who no longer bends just to keep the peace, who walks away when respect disappears. But that's okay. Those who are meant for this new chapter will honor your boundaries instead of resenting them. You'll soon discover something miraculous. Once you stop trying to save what's crumbling, life begins to rebuild around you. Opportunities you didn't expect will appear. People who vibrate at your frequency will find you. Your energy will stabilize. Your sleep will deepen. Your creativity will return. You'll begin to realize that this cut didn't ruin your life. It restored it. One day you'll look back at what hurt you and feel a strange kind of gratitude. You'll see how that painful removal freed you from patterns that would have destroyed you slowly. You'll see how the universe protected your purpose by denying your comfort. You'll whisper, "Thank you for not giving me what I thought I needed." That's when you'll know you've healed, not because the memory is gone, but because it no longer holds power over you. Sagittarius, the cut was never the punishment. It was the proof of your worth. The divine doesn't prune what isn't growing. The fact that something is being removed from your life is evidence that you're expanding beyond it. God isn't asking you to trust the pain. He's asking you to trust the process. Every tear is a seed. Every ending is soil for rebirth. So take a deep breath and release your grip. You can't fall when you're in divine hands. The universe is not taking. It's transplanting you to richer ground. You will bloom again, brighter and freer than before. Conclusion: the courage to trust what hurts. Sagittarius, the hardest lesson you'll ever learn is that divine protection often arrives disguised as loss. But by now, you've begun to feel it. That quiet knowing that what left wasn't punishment but preparation. You've walked through fire and discovered that it didn't destroy you. It purified you. The things that once defined your worth have fallen away. And in their absence, you've found something far more powerful: yourself. There will still be moments of nostalgia, moments when you miss what was, moments when you question if you could have done more. Let those moments come and go without judgment. Healing isn't about forgetting. It's about remembering with peace. The pain that once broke you is now wisdom guiding your steps. The wound that once consumed you is now an opening through which divine light enters. This cut, painful as it was, is your sacred turning point. You are no longer the Sagittarius who clung to what drained you. You are the Sagittarius who trusts what unfolds. You've learned that endings don't mean you're unworthy. They mean you're evolving. You've learned that peace sometimes costs familiarity, and that's a price worth paying. So take this moment as a quiet vow. Promise yourself you will no longer beg to stay where your soul is being suffocated. Promise to honor your intuition, even when it whispers against your desires. Promise to believe that every divine no is a greater yes waiting in disguise. If this message has stirred something within you, let that be your sign. Like, share, or subscribe, not for me, but as your declaration to the universe. I trust what's being removed. I'm ready for what's meant for me. The pain is temporary, Sagittarius. The protection is eternal. You are being reshaped by sacred hands, refined for your next season of light. Keep your heart open. Your dawn is near.